And now, live from downtown Amarillo, Texas, this is the Amarillo Pioneer Podcast. Here's your host and the editor of the Amarillo Pioneer, Thomas Warren.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Amarillo Pioneer Podcast again tonight. We're excited to be speaking with another candidate running in the May 6th election. This year, Amarillo City Council Place number 1 has drawn its largest field ever. We're speaking with one of the candidates running for that seat. She is Chip Hunt, a longtime local business owner, and Chip is going to be telling us all about why she's running and some of the priorities she wants to tackle. But before we get started, Chip, thanks so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And how are you doing this evening?
Thank you, Tom. It's been a long day, but I'm hanging in here.
It has been a long day. I think you are the 6th interview we've done today. So if I sound a little tired, please pardon me. Well, let's go ahead and just get into your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for city council this year.
Well, I've been in business in Amarillo for over 30 years, actually probably closer to 40 now. And I've always started my businesses from scratch and done extremely well. I've done budgets since I was 11 years old. And I'm not an armchair quarterback at any time. When I see problems, I feel like if I feel like I have something to offer to fix those problems and that I can create solutions for the issues, then I'm going to jump in there and try and do it. I really love Amarillo more than anything, and I love all the people here. As everyone knows, I was not born and raised here, but I chose to come here because it was such a wonderful place to live, and the people were so personable, and there was not a lot of huge fighting and not getting along and people wanting to do something for everybody else. And okay. The reason why I want to jump in and do this now is because there has been so much trouble with the growth of Amarillo, which is a fantastic thing, but we've not kept up with our infrastructure. We've not kept up with our police force, and the crime has gotten to be so bad in Amarillo, on every level, from little minor stuff to big stuff. And we have to start tackling this. We don't have a strong enough police force for the size of the city. Basically we're about a 34% police force to this city, and we need a much larger police force. We need to figure out where we need to get the money from, which I'm already delving into the current budget to see where we can adjust things a little bit, maybe cut out some frivolous spending, and create more problems. I've been talking to officers and getting ideas on things that should change within the police force that would help us a whole lot. It's not always about the money, but we do need to get people on the police force and creating a desire, because unfortunately, nationally, it's been a thing of the media doesn't portray our police departments well. They only show when there is a problem, and they slant a lot of those problems to make them bigger. Where overall, most police officers are very, very, very good, and the ones that have a issue, they take care of it internally. They do take care of things internally. And yes, there are some times when something slips. These people are human. But I want to see us do something, and I'm starting to rattle on, so I'll try to keep my answers short for tonight. But that is my biggest issue, is getting the crime in Amarillo under control.
Sure. Well, I think you kind of addressed the priorities question, so let's go ahead and jump into the biggest issue of this election, probably hands down, and that's the Civic Center. You talk to everyone in the city, and everyone's got an opinion about the Civic Center, but after Alex Fairley's lawsuit last year, let's just say we found out some things that were kind of troubling about the latest attempt to do the Civic Center project. And so, if you are elected to the city council, is the Civic Center going to be a priority of yours? And if so, how are you going to make it happen?
Okay, well, the Civic Center is important. The Civic Center should have been redone, in my opinion, years and years ago. However, it was not. Um, the fact that the current council tried to do something that was definitely illegal is a big issue. And I think that mostly for the Civic Center, I believe we must prioritize the issue of reducing crime before we think about doing anything back on the Civic Center. When we do reissue the Civic Center, we of course need to approach it properly, and we need to include Amarillo in what it is exactly that we need to do, and find where the money is going to come from and what part of it we really need to do, and make sure that we do it legally.
Sure. Well, let's go ahead and let's address that crime issue a little bit more. You talked about it a few minutes ago. Our city's growing, and it's just going to continue to grow. That means crime's probably not going to slow down. And you yourself have been a victim of violent crime, according to your website, and you've talked a little bit about that on the campaign trail. So would you mind talking a little bit about your experience, how that's informed your opinion on the crime issue this year, and what you're going to do to make sure that Amarillo has the police force it needs and the training and equipment for the police force to keep Amarillo safe?
Well, I was a victim of severely violent crime last year in my store. I've been a victim of crime like everybody on 6th or historically 66 has been, with break-ins and shoplifting and the criminal element walking up and down the street scaring the tourist. The gentleman last year came into my store when I had gone to the back of my store to get some displays, and started behind my desk. And when I called him and told him to leave, he beat me to the point and he basically left me for dead, fractured 6 ribs and smashed my face in. Nothing that I'm aware of has been done to this day with him. This is an issue for me. This is what finally set home that somebody has to quit sitting back complaining about stuff and get up and go do something. Now, I've got lots of ideas on things to do with the police force. We're never going to get rid of all the crime, but we can get rid of, and we can slow a lot of it down. And our tourism is a major part of bringing money into this town. Without it, we're not getting sales tax dollars, which go to help fund a lot of the things that we need and want downtown or throughout Amarillo, and paychecks for secretaries and park workers and trash pickup and stuff like that. We need that sales tax that the tourism brings in. And as long as we have super crime area where the tourist shops, they're going to be too scared to stay around and to spend the money. There's ideas that I've bannered around, like trying to do something I've seen done in other cities and let the police officers take their cars home with them. This is a big thing. The motorcycle officers take their motorcycles home. But if a police officer is driving around 24/7 in his car, even when he's technically off duty, which police officers never really are, um, he drives down. Now, he can't drive his family around and do family things with his car, but he can, like if he has to run out to the grocery store and pick up some stuff, and he drives his car down to the convenience store, or drives his car to the grocery store, or drives his car to the mall, it it makes the police force look larger because there's that many more cars on the street. And and how to undertake this, I'm trying to read in the budgets where we can get more cars to outfit the cops. Also, when they have to trade cars and stuff, like if they bring somebody in or something happens to their car and they come in and they have to go in and get the keys to another car, and the time it takes for them to walk from the parking lot in to get keys and leave a prisoner and leave the car they were driving to be cleaned up and stuff, and then they go get a key for another car so they can get out there. That time takes them off the street, whereas if they have access to that car constantly and it's their responsibility, it takes less time for them to be off the street when they're on duty. And you know it's a time issue, and time is always money. Then there are different areas that I have different ideas for, and I'm listening to new ideas constantly from other people and from the people that are actually out there having to face the problems every day. The fire department needs to be expanded. Building the new or updating the current ones, fire stations, and building new fire stations in areas is great, but we need more on the outer levels so that they can get outside the city limits faster to some of the fires, because we do have to service these areas too. Um, and there's just several different ways that we can do this. If we have more police officers, they can pay more to even the little crimes that are going on, as opposed to just picking and choosing which crimes they're going to enforce and which ones are not. We've got to take care of the crime from the very tiniest areas to the very biggest areas, and make them meet in the middle. And we have to not let the prisoners go and just give them a slap in the hands, or tell the victims of the crimes that there's no sense taking it to trial because the jury will just let them off, because you don't know what that jury's thinking. And that's why we have jury trials, and we've got to fix that too, because just letting all of them go is not working, because they know they can go and commit the crime again because nobody's going to do anything.
Well, let me ask you about another key issue in this election, and I think you touched on it a little bit on your website, and that is the issue of tourism. Tourism in Amarillo is really important. It's just kind of hard to get from point A to point B when you're talking about, getting people who are driving along the interstate to actually stop and spend a night. And so if you were elected to the city council, how are you going to make sure that Amarillo has a thriving, tourism industry that actually encourages travelers to stay and spend a night or two in Amarillo?
There's several different methods. Years ago, Amarillo was doing a program where somebody driving along 287 or I-40 would be stopped. They weren't doing anything wrong, but they got stopped and literally just offered a free night to stay in town. That they could stay in town for free for the night at one of our nice hotels. And some restaurants were pitching in and having a free dinner for them, and they get to spend the night, and they get to find out about Amarillo while they're staying here, because just driving through, they don't know anything about Amarillo. I've had tons of people, and as old-fashioned as it is, I have billboards up at either end of I-40, and since I've put those up, I have tons of people that will stop into my store and say they have driven through Amarillo for years and never knew that antique stores were here, or that we had the whole little district of historic Route 66 down here. And of course, when I bought my store downtown, or bought my building on Route 66 / 6th Avenue, and was starting my second one for Amarillo's Route 66 store, which at the time there was not any on, I went to David Swinford, and I went to Pete from Lubbock and John Smithy to try and get historic Route 66 signs along the highway, because other states have these big signs that are state signs in brown that point to historic areas. But for some reason, Texas does not allow those. But we did get them to put up the brown signs on the exit ramp at the lights that pointed to us. But they were so small, you really don't even notice them unless you're really looking for them. And so, one of the help things has been putting the shield up on the water tower there on 6th. That was a good plan to help. Of course, in my opinion, it should have been facing Western and not 6th Street, because if they're already on 6th, they're here. But it's done, and it looks great, and we've got to just go with it for the time being. But there's lots of things that we can do to promote. We have production companies here. We can do videos of the surrounding areas and just not even have it just be historic Route 66. And finally, the city is paying attention to historic Route 66 and realizing finally that it is bringing in tons of tourism. Our section of the street has brought in tons of tourism forever. And while the people are here, I'm telling them about Paladero Canyon. I'm telling them about Lake Meredith, Old Tascosa, the museum in Canyon, the museums here in town. I try to tell them, and I have done it ever since I've had the stores down there, because they show up and they go, well, what else is there to do in Amarillo? And I have a whole list of stuff that they never realized was here. And this is something that we're not putting out enough of the word about. And we've got to tell them all about all of it. And so that's my plan on us getting more notifications out.
Let me ask you about one final policy question, and then we'll get into some of the fun stuff this evening. When it comes to the issue of water, It's such an important issue, but we don't really talk about it enough during city elections. And we are in a place in the country where our economy lives and dies with water. We have farming and ranching communities here. We have a lot of people who really depend on water to make their livelihoods. At the same time, we need water here in the city of Amarillo. I don't remember the exact year, but I believe the projections from experts say that the population of Texas is going to double by 2040. And while a lot of that is going to come, south of Interstate 35, the population of Amarillo just continues to grow. And so, as a candidate for city council, as someone who's looking to be elected, how are you going to make sure that Amarillo has the access to the water it needs to continue to thrive as our population continues its growth?
Well, that's a tough one, Tom. This is water conservation has been around Amarillo forever, and I mean, we've been in a drought for so long. We have to figure out better ways to conserve, and I think a lot of it has to do with educating the general public. I mean, because everybody says we need to conserve, but nobody's out there really conserving. Everybody needs to water their grass in their yards because everybody wants green grass. We can find a little bit more drought resistant grass. I just read a thing on a gardening site that planting wild thyme, and it's a spice, thyme. It only grows 2 inches, never needs mowing, and it's beautiful in your yard. So that might be a thing to help conserve, and it's a very hardy plant to grow instead of growing grass. There's things to do, like one of the things I do here, because I buy, like a lot of people, I buy drinking water, and I have gallon jugs. Once those gallon jugs are empty, what do I do with them? Do I just toss them? No, I put them in my kitchen sink, and when I'm running the sink water to get the water hot, I run them into those jugs, because then I can use those jugs, even though I don't want to drink the tap water, but I can use those jugs to put water in my coffee pot, to boil my potatoes, to boil whatever I'm cooking on the stove, to water my plants with, and use it for the dog's water instead of just letting it go down the drain. I I use a lot of times at work. I have a galvanized pail underneath the sink, and when I wash my hands, that water goes straight into that bucket instead of going down the drain. And then I will use it to throw down the commode and flush the commode with it like 2 or 3 times a day, and that saves me from filling up the commode tank again because I've already used that water. And things like this, so that you don't have to just keep running water all the time. And there's lots of things you can do to conserve water and that people haven't thought of yet. And I think the big thing on conserving the water is education. And the farmers and the ranchers, it's even harder for them to conserve water because they've got to have water for those plants. And irrigation is a really good thing, but how often do you run that irrigation pipe? And when do you run it? Ideally, just like watering your lawn, it probably should be used at 4 o'clock in the morning when you're going to use the least evaporation, instead of 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. so the water will stay more instead of evaporating. Um, ranchers, I mean, the animals just have to have so much water. I don't know how to conserve for the ranchers.
Luckily, there's not a whole lot of ranching within the city limits itself. So that
But it
is
does affect the water that comes to the city.
certainly does. It certainly does. Well,
You know.
I we've changed things up this year a little bit, and in previous election cycles, we have sat here for an hour and talked about policy, and that's great. I love that. But the complaint we've heard is that sometimes that just doesn't let voters really get a chance to know who you really are. Not chip hunt the candidate, but chip hunt the person. And so tonight we have a list of some fun get to know you questions we want to ask to give folks a better idea of who you are when you're not running for office. So if you are ready, we'll go ahead and jump right into these.
Okay.
What is your favorite thing about Amarillo?
My favorite thing about Amarillo is that everyone here, for the most part, there's not a whole lot of not getting along. Yes, there are some people that don't like the way some other people live, but that's normal. But you're not out there in the streets fighting and hollering and calling names, and you're figuring out how to get along, and that people care about each other here. People really do care about each other. For example, everyone on the street there came to my aid when I got beat last year. Even some of them that have personal differences with me, they came to my aid. They were there, and they were saying, "Hey, what can I do to help you?" You know, and they were being loving and caring, even though in the past sometimes we didn't always get along. And but that's what I love about Amarillo. It's still got a small town to it, even though it's growing so large. And the people really do care about each other.
Absolutely. What is your favorite restaurant in Amarillo, and what's your go-to order when you go there?
Oh, well, that changes with my moods.
Just pick one for us.
Right now, I'd say Aspen Creek.
That's been a popular one on this podcast. So.
Yeah. And my go-to thing is a steak dinner, and my favorite waiter. And honest to God, I cannot remember his name. But I know he's best friends with the guy that owns Game Quest, Brian. He's Brian's best friend. And so he's my favorite, and I go straight to hit one of his tables and I order steak.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
What is an interesting fact about you that people out there might not know?
Wow. An interesting fact about me. Um, Goodness, Tom. I just don't even think of myself as being super interesting at all. uh, I can't think of anything. I mean, there's so many people in this town that they all know me, but they don't really know me. But I, an interesting fact. I have two dogs, and they are my children. Maybe
Yep.
that's.
No, that's a great one.
I mean, they are basically they are my children, and um, there's not anybody I wouldn't do anything for. As uh, I try to help everybody, and I love everybody. Um, I don't know. I would not know what an interesting fact about me was.
Sure. Well, I have one that we have to ask you. A few nights ago, we interviewed another candidate. I asked them that same question: what's an interesting fact about you? Their answer was that they're not a Cowboys fan. And that has become one of the most controversial issues of this election. So, I have to ask every candidate now because I feel like the voters out there deserve to know. Chip Hunt, are you a Cowboys fan? And if not, who's your team?
Actually, Tom, I am not a sports person at all.
Oh, my goodness.
Um, actually, I really don't care. I mean, on them. If I'm at a game and the Cowboys are playing, I'm naturally going to root for the Cowboys because that's who it is, just like I would the Texas Rangers when I go to those games, which is very far and few between. Um, I think the only thing that I am interested in sports is bowling, and I used to bowl 7 times a week. I carried a pretty good average on bowling, and played in several tournaments. But I'm not overall. Car racing is one of my favorites, but I don't like anything on TV, any sport on TV. I want to go to if I'm going to go to a sport, I want to go to a live sport. Um, Horse racing, I'm great at horse racing. I really enjoy horse racing, and but I just I'm not really a big sports fan.
Well, I'll ask you this one final get to know you question before we wrap up. What was your first job?
My first my first official job was actually officially where I actually got a paycheck was uh, waiting tables. I was a waitress at a little place, and I busted table or cleaned tables off a bus person. But my very first jobs was selling burpee seeds door to door. You know, when I was 12, I sold burpee seeds 12 door to door to raise money.
For those out there who are undecided on this race, they're just looking at the field of candidates and they go, I have so many choices for place one. I just don't know who I want. Can you take just a moment and give us your elevator pitch and tell us why you are the candidate who needs to be elected to that place one seat on the city council this year?
In my opinion, as is every candidate running, is that I am the best choice. Um, Unlike the rest of them, I do have the most experience. I have extremely diversified experience in the working world. Um, I have been doing budgets since I was 11 years old. So I have extreme amount of ability to do budgets. And I have always been able to hold budgets down when I was in the apartment industry. Best known for keeping the expenditures to 34% to the income, which for those of you that do not know, that is unheard of in the apartment industry. It's usually closer to 65 and 70% expenditure to income. Um, I I have great deal of business experience doing several businesses at the same time, and most of them were all self-employed. And like when I sold real estate for 35 years, did apartment complexes, I still do property management. I have my 2 stores down on 6th. the I've always been able to pull myself up by my bootstraps and climb back up on that horse anytime I've been knocked down. So I have a lot of tenacity. That's one of the best words I've ever heard used. And I dig in, I get things done. I'm not making any great promises. I am going to do 100% for every person in Amarillo what I do for my own. And I've raised a ton of money for a lot of people, and I've made their businesses great for a lot of people. And I can do that for Amarillo just as well. And so that's why I feel that I can do the best job, and that's why I feel that I have the most experience to do the best job here in place one.
Well, that is great. For those who want to donate, get a yard sign, knock on some doors, just do something to get Chip Hunt elected to the city council, how can they go about doing that?
They can contact me through the website. They can pick up yard signs at the store, or they can contact us through the website and leave me their address. I can use all the donations that I can help. I'm not getting any big money, which from big conglomerates at this time, which can be a good thing because that means I'm not at their beck and call. And I can take all the money from the little people, and every little dime helps a great deal, because those that are getting the big money can spend a lot more to get their money out, their names and stuff out there.
Absolutely. Well, Chip Hunt, we are really excited that we got to speak with you tonight. Hopefully I'm tripping over my words. You can tell I'm tired. We really appreciate you coming on and speaking with us tonight. We hope that we gave folks a better chance to get to know you a little more. But either way, Chip, we really appreciate you again this evening, and we wish you all the best on the campaign trail.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for having me.